Okay, so we're creating a new project, Xcode new project. And we'll call the project keyboard handling. We'll call the project keyboard handling. This is the lesson for this morning, how to handle the keyboard when it comes on screen, how to handle your UI. Okay? Save this to my desktop. And take this up, change to my simulator. And let's go to our storyboard to set up the user interface of the app. As we said before, the user interface will look very similar to this interface we have up here. We have an image view, which is centered. The width is approximately 50% of the width of the device, and it's a square, and we have 2 text fields. Let's go ahead and set that up. First off, I'll change my background color. Give it some color that you choose here. I'll just go with teal for now. So we have a background color here. I'll go ahead and get an image view from my object library. I'll center my image view. I'll center it horizontally and vertically in the container. So those are 2 constraints on my image view. Horizontally centered, vertically centered. I'll click on Add to Constraints. I'll control drag from my image view over to my actual super view. So I'll control drag from my image view to my super view, and I'll select equal width. I'll go to my size inspector. I'll edit my proportional width here from 0.579 to simply 0.5. I'll press enter. And lastly here, I will control drag from the image view itself upwards, and I'll select aspect ratio. And again, I'll edit my aspect ratio to 1:1. 1:1 just because we want it to be a square where the sides are equal. Great. So here we have our image view. Next, I will add my asset, my Pursuit logo asset, to my assets folder. I'll click on the add button. I'll import. I'll go over to my downloads, which is where my Pursuit logo is. I'll double click on it, and here I have my Pursuit logo. Then I'll go back to storyboard. I'll click on my image view. I'll go to the attribute inspector, and I'll select Pursuit logo. So at this point, we should have our Pursuit logo up. Anybody not have a Pursuit logo in their downloads or from last week? So everybody has it. Perfect. So here we have our Pursuit logo. Let's just run the app. Make sure all is good here. Okay, so our app is running. We have our Pursuit logo. All looks good. Perfect. Let us now add our 2 text fields. Okay. For my text field, I'll use a stack view. So I'll search for stack view. It will be a vertical stack view or a V-stack. So I'll use a vertical stack view, drag it over to my scene. I'll drag the trailing over to the trailing of my super view and trailing right at my blue guideline. And the top, I drag it right above, right about where my pursuit image is at the bottom there. Okay, great. Next, let's get a text field. So type in text field, drag your trailing text field and put in some placeholder text. So the first one will be enter your username in the placeholder text here, placeholder, where it says placeholder. Enter your username. I will also option drag to get a new one. And this one, I will say here, enter your password, enter. And I'll change where it says secure text field. It's a password text field. So I'll make sure to select secure text entry here. That way, Oscar looking over my shoulder doesn't see my password, right? Okay, secure text entry, great. Okay, let's go ahead and set up the constraints for our stack view. So the stack view, we'll make it roughly 100. Let's go and do it first, actually. So click on your stack view, click on add new constraints for the stack view. For the top of the stack view, let's zoom in here. Top of the stack view, I'll make it 20. Lead in, I'll make it 20. Right, I'll make it 20. And for the height of it, I'll make it, say, 100. So those are 4 constraints. Top 20, meaning 20 from the bottom of the image view. 20 lead in, 20 trail in, height 100. Add 4 constraints. So this is my stack view. I will go to my document outline, which is a better place to navigate the stack view here. So in my document outline, I will first click on my username. I'll drag it over to my stack view. And then I will click on my enter password text field, and I'll drag it right below my username. Okay, great. So next, let's go set up our tags view. So click on the stack view, and let's go set up the attributes on the stack view. We said it's a vertical stack view. We want it to be some spacing in between, so we'll say 20. Let me zoom in here. So for the spacing, we'll say 20. We'll make it distribution, we'll make it fill equally. Okay, that's about fine for here. So this is basically our stack view here, and we are good to go. Again, stack views are great for stacking things, for making your views. Like right now, we don't have to constrain our text field. We just put it in there and we set up the attributes for the stack view itself. Okay, let's go ahead and run our app and see the state of our application. So running the app, I will click on my enter username, right? And then the keyboard is partially hiding it. Yes, I could enter a username here somewhat, but I have no access now to my password text field, right? The keyboard now is in the way. So now we want to be able to know when the keyboard comes on screen, right? We want to be able to know when the keyboard comes on screen. Thankfully, there's ways to find out. Apple has a UI responder notification that says, hey, keyboard will show, right? There's a notification for that. So we'll get introduced to Notification Center today. Notification Center is a different communication mechanism in iOS. So far, we've seen Delegation. Delegation is also a communication device in iOS, right? I want to get notified of something. I could create a custom protocol. I could have a delegate object, right? And get notified when that thing changes, correct? Notification Center is also a way of communicating in iOS, right? You could register yourself for some sort of notification, and when that thing happens, you'll get a notification saying, hey, the keyboard is on screen now. Go ahead and do what you want to do, right? So there's keyboard will show notification, there's keyboard will hide notification. Those are the only the two we need for now. We need to know when the keyboard comes on screen, keyboard will show, right? And we want to know when the keyboard will get dismissed, keyboard will hide. And those notifications are part of UI Responder. UI Responder, at the end of the day, is, let's actually go to UI Responder, because this is like the top of the food chain when it comes to listening to events. Okay, so here we have UI Responder, the documentation for it. And here Apple says UI Responder, it's an abstract interface for responding to and handling events. What does that mean? It's abstract. You cannot use it as is, right? I can create an instance of UI Responder, right? But in UI Responder, there's other classes that inherit from UI Responder. For example, a UI control inherits from UI Responder. A UI view inherits from UI Responder, right? A UI button inherits from UI control, which inherits from UI Responder. So at the end of the day, UI Responder is that umbrella, that superclass, where everything else somehow is related to UI Responder. Because UI Responder is big on events. I touched the screen. I dragged something. All that there is an event. And all that is an umbrella under UI Responder. We'll talk more about UI Responder as we get further into curriculum. But we'll see UI Responder today, and we'll be accessing the UI Responder notifications for keyboards. Let me slide this out. Okay. Right, so if we just take a look at here before I actually go away. So things like you could listen to on UI Responder, everything that inherits from UI Responder, every class could basically override touches began, touches moved, touches ended, touches canceled. What does touches began mean? I start doing something on the screen. A delegation method, it gets called, right? Touches moved, I'm moving, I'm dragging. Touches ended, I lift my finger off. So at the end of the day, whether it be a tap gesture, swipe gesture, whatever gesture it is, they're all working from UI Responder events. Okay? This is just a brief introduction. We'll talk more about that as we come closer. But I had to introduce us to what UI Responder is. Okay, cool. Let's keep going. So here we have our elements. We need to connect our storyboard elements to our view controller. So let's go do that in the assistant editor. So access to our assistant editor here. And basically we'll need outlets for all elements here. Plus a constraint, because what we'll do, we'll use a constraint. We'll use the center Y constraint on the image view to move it up. Remember Friday we did constraint animations? So we'll very similar do something with our constraints. When the keyboard shows up, we will animate the constraint up and vice versa there. So let us go ahead and control drag from our image. We'll call this pursuit logo. So pursuit logo is my image view. Click connect. Next we have the username and the password text fields. To make sure that you're connecting the right thing, just control drag from the actual text field in your documents outline. So control drag from say username, and we'll say username text field. Username text field and password text field. Control drag from password over, and this is password text field. Great. And next we'll get access to our center Y constraint on our pursuit logo here. So open up your constraints area here and access where it says pursuit logo center Y. So we'll be moving the center Y up or down. When the keyboard shows up, what are we doing with the center Y? Negative, right? So negative will move it up, whatever the keyboard height is. Cool? Very good. So let's get a constraint for this. Where is it? Here, center Y. Do we all see our pursuit logo center Y? Yeah? Okay, cool. So let us drag this over, control drag, over here. And let's give this a name. We'll call it pursuit logo center Y constraint.
Alex, I don't see the center constraint line.
This is the very in the last constraint.
Oh, the last constraint?
Yeah.
Do you see it?
Yeah, I see it now.
All right, cool. Thank you, Tiffany.
I have the same issue just now.
Cool. Anything else we need here? All right, we're good. We have everything we need. So at this point, let's go back to our view controller. And let me make this bigger. Nobody reminds me. Okay. Can we all see in the back? Can we all see in the back? Lilia? Okay. So we have our 3 outlets. We have our 1 outlet for our constraint. We have our view load. Let's go ahead and write a function. Write a function here. We'll say register for keyboard notifications. And we'll have a next one here called function on register for keyboard notifications. And we'll also go ahead and write some functions here. We'll say private function keyboard will show, and we'll have a next function here, function keyboard will hide. And it's very important that we give each of those functions the NS notification argument, because we need that NS notification argument to get a dictionary or values to know what the keyboard height is. So in those functions here, we'll pass a parameter here. We'll call it notification, and notification is on NS notification. And similar for will hide, we'll have a notification of NS type, NS notification. And as I said before, this is the second communication device we're seeing in iOS. First one, and it's everywhere, it's heavily used, is delegation, where you want to communicate some change. Right? You do it having a custom protocol. On a custom protocol, you set your delegate object with what you want to pass over to whoever is listening. So you broadcast that change, right? So second one we're seeing today is notification. Notification center, also used in iOS. And later in curriculum, we'll come across what's known as KVO, or key value observing, also a way to get notifications from properties. In that case, more properties, as opposed to some event. All right, so here we have our register keyboard notifications. This is what we need to do. That function will be the function we call, for example, in our video load, We'll call that function our ViewDeload to go ahead and say, view controller, you are now listening to changes for the keyboard, right? So let's see what that looks like. So we'll start off by saying notification center. Let me find the key here. So it's notification center dot default. What does that remind us of? When we say notification center dot default, what pattern does that remind us of? User defaults use something very similar to that, but what's the pattern called? Singleton, right? So this is a singleton here. Notification center dot default, a singleton, right? We've seen it in user defaults, as you mentioned. User defaults, that's standard. We've seen it in file manager as well. Again, all through iOS, singletons. Okay, so what are we doing here? So we say notification center dot default. We want to add an observer. We want to add ourselves as the person listening. So I want to say add observer. We'll go ahead and say add observer here. Thankfully, I actually did this here. Add observer selector name. Yeah, this is the correct one. So the one that says add observer, the observer is us. We'll put self in there. Selector is that function you want to call when that notification gets triggered. And the name will be the name of the notification you want to listen to, right? An object, you could pass in some object. Here we'll just pass in nil. But you could pass in some object, meaning some argument, right? So here I'll say observer, and observer we said is self. Selector, we're using Objective-C runtime syntax again here to say hashtag selector, right? It's Objective-C runtime, so what do we have to do? Actually, let's do it and then we'll see what's going on. So we'll say selector, and this one will be keyboard will show. So keyboard will show. And here is where you'll see UI responder being used. So here we'll say UI responder. On UI responder, there is some key, some constant. That's called keyboard will show notification, right? And for the object, we said nil. Okay. We do have one error. What is the error? Objective-C, right? So now I'm using Objective-C runtime syntax here with my @selector, my hashtag selector. So that function itself needs to be marked explicitly with an @Objective-C, right? Compiler directive, okay? So let's just go ahead and do both of them because both of them will be Objective-C functions here. So Objective-C here and Objective-C here. Okay, at this point we could build and we have no errors. So again, we saw what UI responder is. It's an abstract class. I'm not making an instance of the class, but on the class there's some struct which has a key. And this syntax is very similar to what we've been doing for API keys. For example, we create some API key and we say API key dot whatever my key is, right? That way I'm not hard coding strings for my keys. So this is actually a key. This is what you're registering for. Okay, so this is keyboard will show. I'll copy this, right? And I'll paste it in. The only thing I'll change here, let's see. So keyboard will show into the same place, correct. And this one will be keyboard what? Keyboard will hide. And what's the name going to be? We are registering ourselves for keyboard. Right, so we see there's many. There's keyboard did show. If you want to do something when the keyboard actually is on screen. Keyboard did hide. The keyboard completely is hidden at this point. But what we want is keyboard will hide, or will, what is it called? Will hide. So keyboard will hide notification. The keyboard is about to go off screen. We want to register for that particular event. Okay. that function runs in my video load, right? It registers itself, right? It's like, hey, I'm registering myself for incoming calls from California, whatever. Anytime somebody calls from California, I get messages. So I need to say, first, I'm registering for both of those events, right? Maybe none of them get called. But if one or the other gets called, I will get notified.
I think when we have something similar, we broke it up for like keyboard intro and keyboard.
Yes, you could have, I think at the end of the day, there's 4 of them, right? There's there's will show, did show, right? There's will hide, did hide. It's very similar to our view life cycles, right? There's view will appear, there's view did appear, right? Because there's different places you probably want to do different things based on your UI, right? Like with our animations, we did it in view did appear because we wanted our animations to kick off when the view was actually on screen, as opposed to view will load, which is when the view itself got added to the view controller, right? It's not necessarily on screen yet. Cool? Very good. Okay, so this is our notification registration. And as we said, we will register it for it here. So we'll call it register for keyboard notifications. And make sure your 2 functions are different. So here we have will show for will show. And we have will hide for will hide. And we're registering ourselves. So we're saying ourselves, this view controller is the one registering for those notifications. And let's actually just print out, so let's just print out notification dot user info, right? So this is a dictionary to print out for us. And here we'll do the same thing. We'll say print notification dot user info. And we'll put an next print statement. What's that? What? Here we'll just simply copy the function name and put here, and copy the function name. And put here. You see, the way we do most of those projects, we always test, right? Like whether it doesn't have to be a unit test or whatever, but you have a print statement, does the thing work, right? Before you go ahead and you do anything extra, does the functions actually get called, right? With our lab, when we could put in some hard code, zip code. When I run my app, does it show me the correct coordinates for 11226, for example, right? If it shows me my correct zip code, I know my correct coordinate, I know I'm good. We could take it one step further, we could write a unit test for it, right? Okay, so we have enough information. Make sure in your view did load that you are registering for keyboard notifications. And the name, that's pretty much self-documentation code, right? There's no need for us to put the next comment here saying, registering for keyboard notifications. The function speaks for itself. The function says what it does. It's registering for keyboard notifications. That's why Objective-C functions were so long, right? I think there's one that's like, can't remember, but it just made the crowd go crazy one year where they said the name of the thing. Go ahead. Go down here? Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So like we iterate for the observers. So essentially what it does is like as soon as that function's called, it adds observers throughout like the app lifecycle to detect when keyboard shows up.
Yeah.
And it hides, right?
Yep.
Do we ever have to remove the observers?
Yes, like if, for example, we have one view controller here, that's why I actually put like the on register here. So like when you leave in the view controller, you're not still listening, right? So here you would on register yourself. Right, so either I just put the code in here or I do a second view controller because at the end of the day, actually that view controller never goes off screen because that's the main one. But if it was to be the second view controller, you want to unregister as an observer because you don't want to be listening to things where you're off screen, right? That causes issues there. Cool, very good. So the same way you add, you could remove yourself as the observer, right? Let's just actually code it out here. So I would say, notification center default, remove observer for name. So look for remove observer for name here. So basically I want to redo what I just did. So I'll say self. And for the name, what's the name here? How do we get the name? UI responder, very good. So UI responder dot keyboard, will show first. Will show, and object is nil. And I'll just copy this and move it for keyboard will hide. Again, we have one view controller, but in the instance where you're registering for it on a different view controller, when you get it out of scope, right, you want to say unregister. A good place would probably be in the view will disappear, for example. I would just call this function. So I know that I'm not listening to something that's not there anymore. Because notification itself, sender, will add that to its queue of things listening. So if you unregister yourself, it's like good citizenship or good house cleaning. Does that make sense? So to reiterate, Ahad was asking, hey, I'm registering for it. Is there a place that I'm unregistering for it? So here, when you register, that means you're on screen. Everybody? I'm on screen, my video load is on, I'm registering for it. When my view controller is no longer on screen, I want to remove myself as the observer, because there's no way a view controller that's off screen should have a keyboard coming up and listening to it. So at this point, you would say unregister, right? So you could do it, so we have view did load. You could do it saying view will disappear here. Super view will disappear. And I would unregister here. Cool? So that's clean. In, out, right? So at this point, you know it's clean there. Cool? Great. Okay, we were running the app, right? So let's run the app and test what's going on. So I run the application. I click on my either or, it doesn't really matter. I click on username. Now we get some print statements. Looks like something is working. So if I go to my console, we see keyboard will show. Do we see that? Great, we saw keyboard will show. Move up here like this. View will disappear. Here. You're welcome. So at this point, this works. Our notification works. It notifies my view controller that the keyboard is on screen. That's what we registered for. We registered to get notified when the keyboard is on screen, and it works. And make sure it says keyboard will show here, and not will hide, because that's different. We want to do a different thing there when it hides, as opposed to showing. And what are we interested in here? The one key we'll get, you could actually just copy the key. Let's see which key we'll get here. We'll get the key that says user keyboard, begin user. Where is it? Begin user. Where am I? This one. Do we see the key that says UI keyboard frame begin user info key? Right, a bit verbose there. And we see an NSRECT, right? What other rect are we seeing? We've seen NSRECT. What other rects have we seen? CGRECT, right? So NS here says next step, right? It's the same coordinates for a rectangle, right? So here the rectangle says my keyboard is at XY 0896. That's where the origin is on my keyboard. And the size of my keyboard is 414, which makes sense because I'm running an iOS 11 Pro Max device. So the width is 414 points. Everybody sees that? And the height is 301, okay? So the only thing we're really interested in is the height, right? The 414 there. But make sure, let's go ahead and just copy this string.
The height is 301.
The height is 301. Sorry. The height is 301, the width is 414, right? Thank you. So we want to take this key that says UI keyboard. Make sure you copy it. UI keyboard frame begin user info key. Copy that. And let's go to keyboard will show here. You could just comment it out here. Yulia, were you able to get your print statement to show?
Yes, but it looks different.
Do you see keyboard will show in your print statement? Which one actually gets executed? Keyboard will show. You did. Okay. Everybody got their print statement? Yes, sir.
No, mine didn't load.
Yours did not load.
I did load, but I didn't get any information in my,
Did you register for notifications in your view load?
yes.
Okay. Next step. Did you did you do those two functions or those two calls in your register for?
Yeah, keyboard will show.
Perfect. Next up, in your keyboard will show,
That's the election.
did you update your function definition?
Yeah, I have those.
And then just put a print statement in them, either or?
I found my keyboard didn't actually, like it came up, but it didn't actually load, but now it did. I
Okay.
tried again.
Okay. At this point, we're all good, right? We're good? Perfect. All right, let us continue on. So we know we have, this is the dictionary, right? The dictionary is called user info. And we know the key we're looking for, correct? The key is this particular key that we copied. We all have access to that key, yes? All right, so let's go ahead and do some optional binding to get our rectangle value. So here we'll say guard let, I'll call it keyboard frame. Keyboard frame will be notification.userinfo. Everything is any here, you see that? That's like not, that's Swifty. That's very Objective-C, not strongly typed here. Just like whatever I put in there, notification center user info. On our user info, we'll get access to the key that we copied. And that key, what are we expecting back? We'll cast it or typecast it to some CG-rect value. Okay, and here we simply return. This is not a place you want to do a fatal error, right? Right? Or optional here. So put a question mark after user info. This is not a place you want to put fatal error. I'll keep talking about those when I say return here, right? We don't want to crash the app if you don't get your value for the keyboard. Everybody? That's not a developer error. Cool? All right, so UI keyboard frame, begin user info. We good here, keyboard frame. And we'll go again, we'll just test out what the keyboard frame is. So we'll say print keyboard frame is whatever the keyboard frame is, keyboard frame. And we'll take this out. We could take this out. So we only have two print statements, one that says keyboard will show and one that says what the actual keyboard frame is. What's that? Oh, her computer fan. Maybe turn it off. Okay, maybe we'll take like a 5-minute break and then maybe give it a break, right? We don't want it to blow up. Okay, so we have keyboard will show and we have keyboard frame. Great. Okay, let's run it. We'll run it, we'll test it, we'll take a short break and we'll come back. So here I click on my text field, either or, doesn't really matter. And we should, before we go out to break, get those two print statements. One says keyboard will show, and the other one says keyboard frame is 0, 896, 414, which is the width, and the height is 301. Do we see that? Yes. Right? Okay. Everybody has that print statement, correct? Okay, so we'll take a break, and then we'll come back and finish off our keyboard session. Any questions before we stop here? So when we come back, what are we doing? We'll take that height number, and we'll add it to our constraint, and we'll do some animation. So it goes up, okay? And then when it disappears, or not disappears, when it dismisses, we need to reset what we just did. So we'll come back and we'll finish off the constrained animations there.